die after Israel bombards a refugee camp targeting a Hamas commander. And Saudi Arabia is set to host the 2034 Men's FIFA World Cup. A retired Supreme Court Justice Associate suggested that the Philippine government must challenge China to submit the territorial dispute on Scarborough Shoal to arbitration. Former Associate Justice Antonio Carpio said that China's claims to the territory were weak, citing to raise the issue before an arbitral tribunal. He noted that the Philippines has to start a new case on the territorial dispute. Carpio claims in 1734 the Scarborough Shoal has been the territory of the Philippines, which was previously called Panakot. Meanwhile, the retired justice added that China only claimed the islands in the West Philippine Sea in 1947 when it released its 9-dash line map. Carpio underscored that the said map showed a dot in the area of Scarborough Shoal, but no name was printed on it.
The Congress is set for a joint session for Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in his state visit to the Philippines on November 4. Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri described the visit will bolster cooperation between the two allied nations in confronting common challenges. Zubiri said that the Congress is looking forward to the leader of the nation, which to the Philippines is a robust trading partner, strong security ally, and investor. Department of Finance data shows that Japan has provided 7.77 trillion pesos worth of official development assistance to the country from 2001 to 2020. Meanwhile, during President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s visit to Tokyo, Japan vowed 250 billion pesos in aid to the Philippines in the next 2 years. This in the country's bid to reach middle-income status by 2025.
The Department of National Defense has visited two major South Korean defense equipment manufacturers in light of growing calls to accelerate the ongoing armed forces of the Philippines modernization program. The visit to Hanwha Ocean and HD Hyundai Heavy Industries took place on the sidelines of the 12th Seoul Defense Dialogue and Seoul International Aerospace and Defense Exhibit. Hanwha Ocean has offered their Jangbogo IIP and submarine for the proposed submarine project of the AFP. Additionally, 2 missile corvettes are expected to be delivered in 2025 and 2026 by HD Hyundai Heavy Industries. During the visit, the two nations also reaffirmed their strong bilateral defense relations and engaged in discussions regarding regional and global security matters.
The Commission on Elections is in the process of distributing honoraria to teachers who served during the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, which the distribution is set to be completed by Friday. According to the updated COMELEC honoraria, the chairman of the electoral board members will receive 10,000 pesos and the members will receive 9,000 pesos. This increase is in recognition of the longer hours that teachers have had to work, especially in manually tallying the votes. In addition to the honoraria, those teachers who were injured during their election duties will receive compensation ranging from 200,000 to 500,000 pesos. This compensation also extends to volunteers who were involved in accidents while delivering election materials.
Analysts said the country's inflation is likely to go down in October. Government data show the Philippine inflation slipped for the 6 months prior, hitting 8.7% in January. This, however, slowed down to 6.1% in September to 5.3% in August. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' Monetary Board previously raised its policy rates by 25 basis points in October.
The Bureau of the Treasury has reported a slight easing of the government's debt burden in September, primarily due to repayments of all liabilities during that month. The total debt amounted to 14.27 trillion pesos in September, reflecting a 0.6% decrease, equivalent to 80.9 billion pesos from the previous month. However, it remains 5.6% higher compared to the same month last year. Year-to-date, government obligations have increased by 6.3%, equivalent to 849.81 billion pesos. Analysts have suggested that the Marcos administration may face more debts in the coming months as the economy grapples with the aggressive tightening measures implemented by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
According to a poll conducted by the social weather stations, nearly half of Filipino families now consider themselves poor. The survey suggests that around 48% of Filipinos, or approximately 13.2 million families, rated themselves as poor as of September this year. The self-rated poor families increased in almost all regions, with the exception of some areas in Luzon outside of Metro Manila. The most significant increase was observed in Mindanao, where self-rating as poor rose sharply from 54 to 71%. Metro Manila saw a slight increase from 35 to 38%, and Visayas increased from 57 to 59%.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, said 10 Filipinos in Gaza have been unreachable since last week after communications were cut across the place. According to the agency, 126 out of 136 Filipinos in Gaza were all safe and unhurt, but had limited food and water. DFA disclosed that many Filipinos did not want to leave Gaza. The agency clarified that Filipinas married Palestinian nationals and said that they would not cross the border. This without guaranteeing that Egypt will allow Palestinian nationals to seek asylum. The agency further added at least 57 Filipinos are outside the Rafah border and are ready to cross. Coming up, Bolivia and Israel part ways. Protesters disrupt the U.S. congressional hearing. And Houthi rebels in Yemen join the fight against Israel. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart.
Nai-stress rin ba kayo sa tuwing nasisilip ang bill nyo sa kuryente kada buwan? Parang imposible na raw pagkasyahin ng halos 2,000 piso para sa kuryente.
Nagkaroon ng restriction doon sa malampaya supplies para hindi ho tayo magkaroon ng energy security issue. Gumamit sila po ng mas mahal na fuel, yung liquid condensate.
Tumaas ang presyo ng krudo, tumaas din ang interest rates sa pangunguna ng bansang Amerika. Talagang magkakaroon ng price hike, hindi lamang sa kuryente, pero sa iba't ibang mga bilihin natin.
Pagtaas ng presyo ng kuryente, mapipigilan pa nga ba? Mag-reality check tayo.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. The United States, Canada, and Britain unveiled new sanctions on supporters of Myanmar's military regime. The latest sanctions target companies and individuals involving government officials who facilitate violence in Myanmar. Among new sanctions imposed were against the state-owned Myanmar oil and gas enterprise. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged other countries to take the initiative to halt the flow of arms, aviation fuel, as well as and revenue to the military regime. Meanwhile, Canada, along with the United Kingdom, also imposed sanctions on entities providing financial services to the regime. In the year 2021, the military seized power to Burma's government, removing President Win Myint and State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi from office.
Authorities in Bangladesh have arrested a prominent opposition figure from the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and incarcerated him following a nationwide strike that resulted in violent clashes with police. The violence, which included an arson attack in the capital city Dhaka, led to the tragic deaths of at least 3 civilians and left dozens of others injured. The opposition's primary demand is the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and this call led to a nationwide rally that turned violent after the death of a police officer. Secretary General of the opposition Nationalist Party Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir was taken into police custody following the strike. An additional 1,300 individuals are also currently under investigation in connection to these events.
Police have arrested a suspect who took people hostage in a post office in Japan. Authorities say they arrested the suspect after an 8-hour standoff. Police say the hostages were unharmed. Initial reports state the suspect allegedly shot and injured 2 others at a hospital in Todes City. Local reports say the police are also investigating an apartment fire in Todes City. Reports say the apartment reportedly belongs to the suspect.
3 media sources say North Korea will close its embassies in Spain, Hong Kong, and multiple countries in Africa. Kim Jong-un's ambassadors have also paid farewell visits to Angola and Uganda. Some analysts believe North Korea's recent closing of its diplomatic missions is a sign that Pyongyang is struggling to make money overseas due to international sanctions. The embassy closings, which cover nearly 25% of Pyongyang's missions, may also implicate North Korea's diplomatic engagement with other countries. Other experts aver that North Korea's economy is probably weakening since up to this day it remains isolated.
Russia has condemned Israel's attack on Syria. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov brought up the issue of Israeli airstrikes during a phone call with his Syrian counterpart, Faisal Mekdad. The 2 ministers agreed on the urgency of the need for an immediate end to the bloodshed in Gaza, as well as the solution to all humanitarian problems that emerged from the conflict. Meanwhile, Russia has chastised the Hamas attack, however, called Israel's response to Gaza an unacceptable form of collective punishment against innocent civilians.
Bolivia says it is cutting diplomatic ties with Israel. This as a rebuke for its bloody offensive in the Gaza Strip after a deadly Hamas attack last month. Bernadette Regini reports.
Bolivian Deputy Foreign Minister Freddy Mamani says its government has decided to cut diplomatic relations with the State of Israel. The decision, he says, is in repudiation and condemnation of the aggressive and disproportionate Israeli military offensive being carried out in the Gaza Strip. Minister in the presidency, Maria Nella Prada, also announces the country is sending humanitarian aid to Gaza. Prada says Bolivia demands an end to the attacks in the Gaza Strip. She says such attacks have caused thousands of civilian deaths and the forced displacement of Palestinians. The government of leftist Luis Arce is the first in Latin America to cut ties with Israel since the Hamas attacks on October 7. It was in 2019 when Bolivia announced it was restoring ties with Israel, a decade after they were cut over previous attacks on the Gaza Strip. Several leaders in the region have spoken out against the offensive. Bolivia's decision comes after Colombia called for Israel's ambassador to leave the country before rolling back the comments in a diplomatic spat over the offensive. The Hamas-controlled health ministry says Israel's offensive has now killed more than 8,500 Palestinians, 2/3 of whom are women and children. Bernadette Regini for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
French President Emmanuel Macron is embarking on a visit to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan with the aim of securing uranium supplies within Russia's sphere of influence. This move comes against the backdrop of rising geopolitical tensions with the European Union's key suppliers, Niger and Russia. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan are France's primary and 3rd largest sources of uranium, which is essential for fueling nuclear power plants. Kazakhstan is France's primary source of uranium, and Uzbekistan is their 3rd largest source. Macron's trip to these countries also seeks to expand French influence in a region that has strong ties with Russia as the EU continues to turn away from Moscow following the Ukraine war.
In Mali, as soon as the United Nations peacekeeping mission MINUSMA evacuated Kidal, rebels in the region claim they have occupied the camp. JC Yumal reports.
Separatist rebels in northern Mali claim to have taken over a camp just evacuated by the UN in the strategic town of Kidal. This is seen as a significant development in an ongoing battle for territory. A local official confirmed the rebels occupied the camp immediately after it was vacated by the peacekeeping mission MINUSMA. A convoy of peacekeepers made up of more than 100 vehicles earlier left the camp in a column or more than 100 vehicles. MINUSMA official says the convoy is heading for Gao, another key town in the north about 330 kilometers away. It is the third and last camp to be evacuated by the mission in the Kidal region of Mali's volatile north. The other two abandoned camps were at Tessalit and Agulhok. The region has been racked by jihadist and separatist violence. JC Umul for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In the U.S., protesters demanding Washington to stop funding Israel's fight against Hamas repeatedly interrupt a congressional hearing on U.S. military aid. Mikey Suede has the details.
Some 24 spectators raised their hands covered in red paint to interrupt a congressional hearing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were appealing to the Senate Appropriations Committee. Blinken and Austin were asking for billions of dollars in military assistance to support Israel, Ukraine, and other security costs. Red-painted hands symbolize the bloodshed in the Gaza Strip since Israel began its bombardment of the Palestinian territory after Hamas attack earlier this month. Several wore messages of "Free Gaza" written on their arms. Others held signs demanding no more dollars for Israel. Some cried out, "Ceasefire now! Palestinians are not animals and shame on you all." Another wore a shirt reading, "Stop backing genocide." Blinken stopped speaking several times. Demonstrators were then escorted out by police. President Joe Biden has asked Congress for more than $105 billion in security spending. This includes $14.3 billion for its staunch ally, Israel. Israel's response to the Hamas attack has now reportedly killed more than 8,500 people. The siege comes after the bloodiest attack in Israel's history, when Hamas gunmen killed some 1,400 people in the brutal cross-border raid. Mikey Suede for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States military and diplomatic leaders urged Congress to send immediate aid to Israel and Ukraine. The Biden administration is requesting the Congress $105 billion emergency aid request for conflicts in Israel and Ukraine. $14.3 billion will go to Israel, $61.4 billion for Ukraine, $9.1 billion for humanitarian efforts in Gaza and elsewhere. The $7.4 billion funding goes to Indo-Pacific. The White House also requested around $14 billion to protect the U.S. border. New House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier proposed focusing on Israel alone. But top officials argued that sending aid to both countries would signal the strength of the United States to its adversaries worldwide. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that inaction of those who were concerned would threaten the security of the United States and the rest of the world. Austin said without the support of the United States, Russian President Vladimir Putin will succeed. Blinken also asserted 400 American citizens are stuck in Gaza and must be evacuated.
Israeli airstrikes hit the densely populated Jabalia refugee camp in the Gaza Strip, killing more than 50 people and injuring 150 others. An Israeli military official confirmed the attack, saying that it was neutralizing a Hamas commander, but reports of a successful operation have not yet been broadcast. An Israel Defense Forces statement said the strike on Jabalia, Gaza's largest refugee camp, had targeted Ibrahim Biari, who was the ringleader for the murderous terror attack of October 7. Israeli tanks have been acting in Gaza for at least 4 days following weeks of air bombardments in retaliation for an attack by Palestinian Hamas militants and the taking of more than 200 hostages. A Hamas statement said there were 400 dead and injured in Jabalia, which houses families of refugees from wars with Israel dating back to 1948. However, independent sources could not confirm the definite number of casualties to this day. The blast left large craters in a rubble-filled area surrounded by wrecked concrete buildings. Israel has sent repeated warnings to Gaza residents to evacuate northern areas, and while many have gone south, many have not due to lack of mobility in their old age and fear of being caught in the crossfire.
The Houthi government in Yemen has claimed to launch drones and missiles against Israel in support of the Palestinian cause.
هذه السيارة تابعة للجمهورية اليمنية وعاصمتها صنعاء، وفخامة الرئيس مهدي المشاط قد وجه القوى العسكرية بكل أطرافها، وأيضا قائد الثورة الحبيب عبد الملك بدر الدين الحوثي أعطى الإشارة الواضحة بإسهامنا المباشر وغير المباشر في مقاومة هذا العدوان المتجبر، العدوان الصلف الذي يقتل فيه أهلنا وأسرنا ونسائنا وأطفالنا وشيوخنا في أرض فلسطين.
The Israeli military has recently deployed ground troops into Gaza after weeks of artillery and airstrikes in their conflict with Hamas militant group. The impact of Yemen's strike on Israel remains uncertain, but at least one missile from Yemen crashed in Jordan's deserts, causing no damage or casualties. Another missile flew over Saudi Arabia, which caused the kingdom to activate its air defenses. Just earlier this month, the U.S. Navy claimed to have intercepted several missiles or drones fired toward Israel over the Red Sea, although these incidents were not directly attributed to Yemen.
The United Nations Children's Fund describes Gaza as a graveyard for children and asks for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the war-torn Palestinian enclave. Arlene Ocampo tells us more.
In Geneva, UNICEF spokesman James Elder says Gaza has become a graveyard for children.
Gaza has become a graveyard for children. It's a living hell for everyone else. And yet the threats to children go beyond bombs and mortars. And I want to speak briefly now on two of those, water and trauma. The more than 1 million children of Gaza have a critical water crisis. Gaza's water production now, its capacity is at 5% of its daily output. So child deaths to dehydration, particularly infant deaths to dehydration, are a growing threat.
Elder recalls that from the earliest days of the unprecedented hostilities in the Gaza Strip, UNICEF has been straightforward about the need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. This, he says, for the aid to flow and for the abducted children to be released. Elder says UNICEF has pleaded for the killing of children to stop. But in just 2 weeks, Elder says their gravest fears about the reported number of children killed reaching the thousands have come true. The UNICEF spokesperson says more than 3,450 children have been reported killed, and that this number rises significantly every single day. Elder also mentions about the war's after effects, especially on children.
Then, of course, we have the trauma. When finally the fighting stops, the cost to children and their communities is going to be borne out for generations to come. Before this latest escalation, before it, more than 800,000 children in Gaza, that's 3/4 of the entire child population of Gaza, were identified as needing mental health and psychological support. Again, that's before this latest nightmare.
Elder's WHO counterpart, Christian Lindmere, warns of an imminent public health catastrophe in the area.
We have 50,000 pregnant women with an average of 180 plus births a day. We have 350,000 people with non-communicable diseases. That's diabetes, heart diseases, cancer, others. 1,000 patients in need of kidney dialysis. All this cannot happen without supplies, without electricity, without the medicines. Surgeries cannot happen without anesthesia. In fact, they do happen without anesthesia. It's an imminent public health catastrophe that looms with the mass displacement, the overcrowding, the damage to water and sanitation infrastructure.
Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees appeals for the divided UN Security Council to unite. He asked the Council to back a ceasefire and end what he calls the Middle East's spiral of death. Anna Kui reports.
UNHCR Chief Filippo Grandi tries to convince the Security Council that a humanitarian ceasefire can at least stop the catastrophe happening in the Middle East. Grandi urges the Council to overcome divisions and exercise its authority in demanding a ceasefire.
Humanitarian ceasefire, coupled, of course, with substantive delivery of humanitarian aid inside Gaza, can at least stop the spiral of death. And I hope that you will overcome your divisions and exercise your authority in demanding one. The world is waiting for you to do so.
Grandi further says that the past 3 weeks prove that disregarding basic rules of war and international humanitarian law is increasingly becoming the norm and not the exception. The UNHCR chief describes what millions of Gazans are enduring and calls for a just solution.
As we speak, and as you know, over 2 million Gazans, half of them children, are going through what my colleague Philippe Lazzarini has called hell on earth. A humanitarian will be no peace in the region and in the world without a just solution to the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, including the end of the Israeli occupation.
Anna Kui from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, Iglesia Ni Cristo offers its support to residents suffering from poverty in Lilongwe, Malawi. Bangladeshi garment workers demand fair wage and humane treatment. And the shift to clean energy is inevitable. Matanang Agila International will be back after a short break.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
The Iglesia Ni Cristo, through the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, has offered support to residents suffering from poverty with the conduct of its socio-civic activity, Care for Humanity. Darlington Nakutepa has the details.
When experiencing the drought, that means all the crops are wasted. So our lives suffering a lot.
Life is difficult here in Malawi.
Prices of goods are too high in Malawi.
Awa limao oceana ochokera kwa anthu anga aku Malawi oposera 2/3 anthu ochuluka amene akukhala mu umphawi wa dzaoneni.
My name is Darlington Naktepa. Join me as I tell you some of my people's story and their life journey. This is my Malawi.
Ndine Salos, Mr. Salos Kamkasa. Ndilinzaka 92 years. Ndipo ndili nkazi ndi ana 4. Ndimagwira ntchito ziwiri. Ndimakonza zinjinga ndipo ndimagada sopa kwa pa munthu. Zimene zimandidyetsa pa moyo wanga ndizili zimenezo. Ndili kuno ku Lilongwe.
Food security is obvious problem, with almost 70% of Malawian citizens scrapping by on an average of $1.90 a day if they are lucky. As our very own worldwide Lingap and Mamamayan commerce on time and in a very organized way, it is inspiring to know how this is manifested regularly throughout Malawi and the whole world.
Brother, you're welcome. Brother, you're welcome. In 2 or 3 days.
In the morning, I was happy to join the church where the dedication was happening for the new church at Kauma. Just a few hours after the dedication, we are now here taking of the material needs of people. I think that is very exciting.
Gaya ng bilin sa atin ng ating tagapamahalang pangkalahatan, ang kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo, ay huwag tigilan ang pagtulong sa ating kapwa. Kung saan may nangangailangan, naroon ang kanyang paglingap. Ito pong kontinente ng Afrika ay talaga namang espesyal sa ating namamahala. Kaya't itong buwan ng Oktubre, ginugunita natin ng kanyang kaarawan. Ipinasya niya na dito sa kontinente ng Afrika magsagawa ng malawak na lingap sa mamamayan.
We chose this venue, Cebu Stadium, because this is a center of many people here in Lilongwe. And that made it very easy for the Care for Humanity program to be a success, for many people to come here to know about the Church of Christ, to know about these programs.
It's my first time to see something very huge like this being led by the church. I have hope for the future that this is just the beginnings.
Thank you so much, people from the Church of Christ, just because of what you have done to us as Malawians.
They say a smile can tell 1,000 stories. And with more than 5,000 citizens cared for and nourished for days to come, these grateful smiles, stories of inspiration and gratitude.
Zikomo kwambiri wampingo wa Kristo.
From Lilongwe, Malawi, this is Darlington Naktepa for Worldwide Link Up San Mamamayan special coverage.
Meanwhile, in Papua New Guinea, hundreds of runners joined Pinktober Run 2023 in support of breast cancer awareness in the country. Eko Hortaleza Quinola reports.
In collaboration with the French Embassy and Port Moresby General Hospital, the Active City Development Program hosts Pinktober Run 2023. The run aims to raise breast cancer awareness and support cancer treatment within the community.
We decided to sponsor this event to raise awareness on breast cancer, on how we can treat it and first detect it, and also we're here to fundraise money to participate to buy some medicine for 50 women at the Pamjam Hospital.
Hundreds of runners from different nationalities and from various agencies and companies doll up in pink outfits.
We had a good time. We are very happy, and we will meet next year for this same event and before for the Olympics in Paris. Thank you.
It's a good big turnout. It's bigger than last year, so it's getting bigger all the time. So that means the awareness is spreading out, and it's good for our city and good for the country, because now cancer, among other lifestyle diseases, is taking a big space in the health risk.
An estimated 100,000 kina, that's $26,600, has been raised benefiting breast cancer patients in Papua New Guinea's largest general hospital.
You just can't miss it. It's a noble cause. You sweat for it. The best demonstration is to sweat for a cause. The European Union was really proud to take part of it. The essential is not to win, is to participate.
My friends and I decided to do it again. We're all about being healthy and we work out together. So this was just another opportunity for us to wake up earlier than usual and come out here and do a 7K run for a good cause. Also out here representing the Team PNG, getting ready for the Pacific Games. So go Team PNG.
Aside from the fun run, there's an early morning exercise and a raffle with prizes including domestic flight tickets and other gifts.
From Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Eko Hortaleza Quinola, mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Thousands of migrants are marching from southern Mexico to the U.S. border in a quest for a better life. Many are fleeing from poverty and organized crime in Central and South American countries. David Oria has more.
This latest migrant caravan left southern Mexico Monday. State officials estimate the crowd at about 3,500, but organizers say more than 5,000 people are making the trek north. Most of those walking north hail from Cuba, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Venezuela, and Haiti. Security personnel and ambulances accompanied the migrants as they made their way along a coastal highway. This latest influx comes as the U.S. decides what to do about its southern border. U.S. President Joe Biden is under pressure to do something about the number of people illegally entering the country from Mexico. David Oria from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States has started to buy tons of Japanese seafood to feed American troops. U.S. Ambassador to Tokyo Rahm Emanuel says Japanese fish, scallops, and other seafood products will be served on U.S. Navy ships. Feeding Japanese seafood to U.S. soldiers would not completely offset Japan's loss of the Chinese market, but Emanuel says it would make a statement about Beijing's economic coercion. China imposed a ban against Japan after the release of treated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant.
17 people were killed in a raid on a remote village in northeast Nigeria. Sources said militants affiliated with the Islamic State group stormed the remote farming and herding villages of Kayaya and Yobe. The militants attacked the village with explosives and guns. Yobe State Police reported that militants and armed groups in remote parts of Nigeria demand taxes on communities to raise funds. Meanwhile, the same militants responsible for the raid confirmed attacking a bar with explosives, killing 6 people and injuring 16. United Nations data shows that Nigeria's military insurgency has killed 40,000 people and displaced nearly 2 million in the northeast since 2009.
In Bangladesh, police clashed with thousands of garment workers demanding fair wages for the clothing they make for major Western brands. Kimi Oria has more.
The clash erupts a day after similar protests left at least 2 people dead. Police say tens of thousands of workers at dozens of factories had launched strikes in Ashulia and Gazapur. Authorities fire tear gas and rubber bullets as crowds smash up factories and block roads. Gazapur alone is home to more than 1,000 plants that make clothing for brands such as H&M and Gap. Bangladesh is one of the world's largest garment exporters. The industry accounts for 85% of the South Asian country's $55 billion in annual exports. But conditions are dire for many of its 4 million apparel workers. Union leader Kamran says the cost of some basic food like potatoes and onions had more than doubled since last year. House rents have also spiked. The only thing that has not increased is salaries. The head of the garment Shramrik Samhadi union says the compensation manufacturers are offering less than what a worker got in 2017. This, once inflation and currency depreciation were taken into account. Kimi Oria from Matanang Agila International, Trusted, connected, on point.
A TikTok star who is accused of falsely posing as a doctor has been arrested in South Africa after attempting to enter a hospital. Matthew Lanny, known for his online presence and sharing medical advice, had amassed a substantial following on the platform. He was also selling medication through his online persona. Lanny recently tried to gain access to a hospital by disguising himself with a surgical mask and stethoscope. When confronted by authorities, he attempted to escape police custody by jumping out of a bathroom window, but was eventually apprehended. The local health department issued a statement revealing that Lanny had frequently visited Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg, where he had been creating misleading content under the false pretense of being a qualified doctor.
A New Zealand tour company has been found guilty of not minimizing risks to 22 people who died in the 2019 White Island volcano disaster. Judge Evangelist Thomas criticized what he said were astonishing failures by Wakaari Management Limited, which licenses tours to the island. The case is the largest action of its kind brought by New Zealand's regulator WorkSafe NZ. Now the company faces 1.5 million New Zealand dollars in fines. The December 2019 eruption killed 22, almost half of the people who were on the island at that time, with another 25 people suffering extensive burns. The volcano had been showing signs of heightened unrest for weeks before the fatal eruption, but the company blatantly chose to ignore all prior warnings in exchange for a turn of profit.
A report from the International Energy Agency, or IEA, says the world's shift to clean energy is unstoppable. The global energy watchdog expects renewable energy will provide half of the world's electricity by 2030. The report also shows the significant progress countries have made in expanding renewable energy and supporting consumers with the shift to electric vehicles and heat pumps instead of gas boilers. Based on IEA's study, 1 in 24 cars sold in 2020 was electric. Just 3 years later, this number has risen to 1 in 5. But IEA Executive Director Faith Burrell also warns the phase-down of carbon and fuel emissions is not happening quickly enough. He urged governments, companies, and investors to support clean energy transitions. Coming right up, Samsung's chip demand is on the rise. Apple's new chips are scary fast. And Saudi Arabia puts in their bid for the 2034 World Cup. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Dito, ang inyong sumbong siguradong may responding katapat. Hindi nagdadalawang isip na tumulong sino man ang nangangailangan. Grupo ng mga nanay na tumutulong sa mga batang may sakit at special child, makikilala na. Librarian na may sariling estilo sa pagkukwento, kinagigiliwan ng mga bata sa Maynila. Pag-asawang tumutugon sa pangangailangan ng kanilang mga kababayan na ating kilalanin.
Every time po na may extra kami, sinishare po namin sa kanila.
Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi, ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Open for Business is in a room of influencers, not just in terms of followers on social media, but on how they shape their organization or industries and serve as inspiration to many. We are excited to speak to some of them and get insights on how to be a roaring success in their personal endeavors and in nation building. Let's meet some of these inspiring individuals here at the Power Gala of the Rising Tigers and nation builders and innovators, and trailblazers.
We're doing this kind of activity to present the future leaders for the next 20 years. So this is actually for the emerging leaders to be inspired from the icons or the captains of the industry or nation builders.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Samsung Electronics on Tuesday flagged a gradual recovery in chip demand in 2024. Samsung said growing interest in devices that can power artificial intelligence workloads locally will boost demand for dynamic random access memory chips. The tech giant also reported a quarterly profit of $1.78 billion. The company said its third quarter profit was much higher than the previous ones. Samsung said its semiconductor business is improving since they focused on more profitable advanced chips for workloads like artificial intelligence. The company also reduced the production of older and less powerful chips. Elon Musk's Tesla is aiming to make 200,000 units of its electric pickup truck this year or per year. Tesla earlier said it can produce more than 125,000 Cybertrucks a year, but Musk believes his company can potentially lift up their production to 250,000 Cybertrucks in 2025. Musk says the futuristic electric car will be built with bulletproof steel panels, adding that people will have the option to upgrade the windows to bulletproof glass. Tesla is expected to begin the deliveries of Cybertruck this coming November 30.
I'm going to show you just how hard.
Chosen from a list that includes debanking, de-influencing, and greedflation, the Collins Dictionary picks AI, the acronym for artificial intelligence, as the word of the year. AI is now officially defined as the modeling of human mental functions by computer programs. The publisher says AI was chosen since it has accelerated at such a fast pace and become the dominant conversation of 2023. Collins Dictionary adds the use of the artificial intelligence acronym has quadrupled over the past year. Faster than the speed of light, Apple just unveiled their new processors, plus the new MacBook Pro lineup in an event taglined "Scary Fast." Vin Pasqua has the data.
At an event live streamed on Monday night taglined "Scary Fast," Apple CEO Tim Cook appeared in an all-black ensemble and introduced the company's next-generation family of custom-made processors, the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max. Speaking from a stage on Cupertino, California headquarters, Cook unveiled these processors along with a handful of new computers, the new 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro laptops. The speed of the M3 chip are now up to 2.5 times faster than the M1 family of chips, and its core processing performance is up to 50% faster. The M3 chips are built with 3nm technology, which can support advanced graphics and even artificial intelligence. It is so fast that it can read DNA, RNA sequencing. The new MacBook Pro laptops, which will sport the M3 Pro and M3 Max chips, will come in a new space black color, replacing space gray. Vin Pasqua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Saudi Arabia is set to host the 2034 Men's FIFA World Cup. This is after Australia withdrew its interest in hosting the FIFA tournament. Australia's decision not to bid has left Saudi Arabia as the only confirmed bidder for the event. Meanwhile, Spain, Portugal, and Morocco are due to co-host the 2030 FIFA tournament. Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay will individually stage an opening match to mark 100 years since the first World Cup took place. And evaluation processes for the 2030 and 2034 tournaments. Taylor Swift's highly successful re-recordings caused major record labels to make new contract changes to prevent newly signed artists from doing the same. Bernadette Manuel has the scoop.
Inspired by Taylor's version, record labels are introducing new changes to artist contracts. When Swift's former label Big Machine Records was infamously acquired by Scooter Braun in 2019, the pop star began to re-record her first 6 studio albums. The re-recorded album's 1989 Taylor's version proved to be a lucrative move for Swift, who was last week officially declared to be a billionaire. As reported by Billboard, major record companies such as Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, and Warner Music Group are set to introduce stricter contract terms for artists by demanding longer waiting periods before they can re-record their music. From 5 to 7 years from the release date of the original, the waiting period has now been extended to 10, 15, or 30 years. Some artists and their attorneys, however, are pushing back against these limits. Bernadette Manuel for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Nenita Manawis takes us along on her visit to one of Denmark's gems, its capital, Copenhagen. Let's take a look.
If you ever find yourself in the city of Copenhagen, capital of Denmark, with more than a few hours to spare, there is no shortage of things to see and experience to pass the time. It takes only about 15 minutes by either train or metro from the Copenhagen airport to the Copenhagen Central Station, the gateway to all the public transportation. Is also walking distance to many of the city's top attractions. Daniel D. Kov, a local artist and native of Denmark, shared his favorite places to visit in Copenhagen.
I live here in Copenhagen all my life, so yeah, I recommend tourists to visit. Would definitely be Tivoli amusement park. I mean, it's so beautiful, atmospheric, like local, and like authentic Danish. At the same time, very multicultural, so definitely recommend that place.
And in 1843, it is the world's second oldest amusement park. The Tivoli Gardens is said to have inspired fairy tale writer Hans Christian Andersen and Mickey Mouse creator and Disneyland founder Walt Disney. Across the road is the Copenhagen City Hall, a building that exudes the features of the National Romantic style. In front of the City Hall is the Rauspladen, or the City Hall Square, a significant public gathering area where key events and demonstrations are held. The City Hall Square is also the starting point of Stroll, the 1.1-kilometer stretch, one of the longest pedestrian streets in Europe. Stroll is most famous for shopping. The Round Tower. Considered to be one of the most iconic buildings in Copenhagen, the Round Tower was built in the early 17th century. There is no elevator, so you will need to walk up the wide spiral steep stairs to get to the observatory at the top of the tower, a 360-degree view of the city. Copenhagen is home to one of the oldest monarchies. Here you can find castles and palaces, one of which is the Christiansborg Palace. A breathtaking experience of walking in the footsteps of royalty.
I would recommend Nyhavn because it's just so amazing and beautiful, like perfect for restaurants and cafes.
Nyhavn, or New Harbor. This waterfront, canal, and entertainment district offers history, culture, charm, and canal tours. Another great way to see the city from a different perspective through its waterways. Copenhagen is a bike-friendly city, but also for tourists, with rental bikes being very accessible.
But almost the same mandatory thing would be The Little Mermaid because of its history, because of the book. You know, it doesn't get more Danish and classic than that, so I would definitely say The Little Mermaid as well.
There is so much more to see and experience in Copenhagen, but I hope you enjoyed this brief tour of the city. In Copenhagen, Denmark, I'm Ninita Manawis, Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Let's head over to Townsville in Australia, where Net25's Morgan Goodfellow takes us to the season's most recent display at the Perc Tucker Regional Gallery. Morgan?
Home to many distinguished and great art collaborations, the Perc Tucker Regional Gallery is also more often than not supporting the rise of many progressive and hopeful creators. This season, the gallery has on display Soundtracks.
Soundtracks is created by a group of Townsville-based printmakers exploring relationships between verbal and non-verbal imagery. Artists of the exhibit have employed printmaking media and techniques into the pieces. These include stencils, etchings, lino cuts and risographs in combination with other media and art forms. Non-verbal memory makes it possible to retain content without words, and has the ability to code, store, and recover information about faces, shapes, images, songs, sounds, smells, tastes, and feelings. Sound, particularly in music, is heavily involved in associative memory of events or experiences of the past. Hearing a few notes of a song, or feeling an emotion one associates with a song, may trigger involuntary memory of an experience.
The Soundtracks exhibition will be on display until the 3rd of December. If you happen to be in the area, be sure to check out this amazing display. Morgan Goodfellow, Townsville, Australia, Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, and on point.
And we're already halfway through the week.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. And to send you off today, here's a quote from Russian playwright and short story writer Anton Chekhov. Only during hard times do people come to understand how difficult it is to be master of their feelings and thoughts.
And sometimes we are pressured to keep our feelings in, but I think it's a good reminder, especially on a Hump Day Wednesday, if you want to cry, if you want to just show some anger, if you just want to let loose, do it for yourself, acknowledge those feelings.
And if you're happy all the time, I don't think that'll do anything to strengthen you.
That's true.
It's really the tough experiences that you go through that makes you stronger.
I agree. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.